I'm the Secretary-Treasurer of the Rhode Island AFL-CIO and the co-chair of Climate Jobs Rhode Island. Welcome to today's press conference on our Green and Healthy Schools campaign. You're going to hear from a number of speakers today talking about an important piece of legislation. Back in 2021, the state of Rhode Island passed the Act on Climate, setting ambitious goals to make sure that our state decarbonizes its economy by the year 2050. Since then, Climate Jobs Rhode Island, along with all of our coalition partners, has worked with our friends in the General Assembly to make sure that this state sets the standard for the entire country when it comes to creating a renewable energy-based economy. Last year, we passed a bill that would require 1,000 megawatts of offshore wind procurement. We passed a bill to make sure that Rhode Island has a standard that by 2033, all of our energy needs to be purchased from renewable sources. And more importantly, we made sure that any time the state is going to be involved in renewable energy projects, it has to be done using incredibly strong labor standards, including project labor agreements, paying prevailing wage, and using apprentices. Today, we're talking about the next step in our journey to making sure that we reach the goals of the Act on Climate. And that's going to be to make sure that every single public school building in the state of Rhode Island is carbon-free by the year 2035. You're going to hear from from speakers today that can outline exactly how we're going to make that happen. So before I bring up our first speaker, I just want to acknowledge all of the people in the room that are members of the General Assembly who have worked so hard to make sure that this is possible. I'd also like to really make sure that our friends in the environmental movement and the labor movement know that this coalition would not be possible without all of their help. I'd specifically like to point out a couple of friends. We have Nisa from Senator Whitehouse's office is here. Want to make sure that she gets represented. Senator Oyer, the champion of the Act on Climate in the Senate, Representative Donovan, and a number of other members of the General Assembly are here. And to begin our speaking program, what I'd like to do is bring up our House sponsor of the Green and Healthy Schools Initiative this year, Representative Arthur Handy.
Thank you, Pat. And I want to thank my colleagues both from the House on my side and the Senate as well. We have a lot of interest and a lot of support from our members out this area on this kind of a topic. I had no trouble finding many folks that were really excited about the idea of becoming co-sponsors of this legislation. I also, like Patrick, want to thank the members of the labor community, the environmental community, and other community organizations too that really are taking a stand on this and know how important this is. And I am very proud to sponsor the Green and Healthy Schools bill. Sorry, I had a little extra letter I was looking to add in there. And on the House side, it's 6008. I don't know actually off the top of my head what the Senate one, 0537. And it's going to commit us really to take strong actions with our public schools. And for folks who don't know, a lot of my career has been in environmental health. I worked for the Lung Association, I've worked for environmental groups, and I think it's part of the environmental movement maybe that some folks forget about every once in a while. We don't think about we think about, you know, the charismatic animals, we think about things like clean water and clear air, which are vital, but we also ought to remember too that the best example I have is thinking about Parkview Middle School, great middle school in my district there. They used to warm up all the buses for the whole city in that parking lot. And it's in this little valley. And so the teachers and the kids and even the residents that lived up sort of at the top of this little tiny valley all were dealing with these fumes that were building up around there. And that's the kind of situation we're talking about. We want our schools to be a place that kids are going to be able to learn. We want the teachers to be able to teach. And if you're having these circumstances, you're going to see asthma rates spiking. You're going to see other reasons that kids are going to be out sick. And so it really makes a lot of sense to think about schools as one of our first places to think about this. And this kind of legislation is really also so vital because it not only shows our kids that we're committed to this by having renewables, by having energy efficiency in our schools, by thinking about their air quality, but it also it's really a leading edge, I think, in moving us forward. We want our kids to know that these things are possible. We want to know that these things are being done specifically for them too at some points as well. So we do need to make sure that those pieces are there. As Patrick was mentioning, Act on Climate is I think a great lead into this, and this is almost an absolutely necessary piece of having Act on Climate succeed. We have to get to a place where where we're looking at our schools, especially new school construction. It's absurd to think that we wouldn't be looking at these kinds of buildings as starting right out of the gate as being carbon neutral, or even carbon negative, because again, that way we're getting ourselves as school systems toward carbon neutral. Just a couple things to remember: buildings, cars, and heat, or really electricity otherwise, are sort of the three big kind of pieces of carbon. Buildings are about almost a third, about 27%, so maybe not quite a third, but of the carbon emissions for our state. So think about it that way. This is an easy spot to make sure we're focusing on. It's a spot we haven't been able to focus on as much, and it really, I think, will make a big difference. And transitioning all Rhode Island's K-12 public schools to net zero could cut emissions by well over 100,000 metric tons of carbon by 2030. Just as Act on Climate recognizes the importance of a just transition to really address those environmental injustices, and providing the good opportunities to work with underserved communities. This bill also addresses that commitment. We're going to be making some of our biggest public investments in schools, obviously, and I think that's a commitment just about every single legislator and just about every single resident of the state is supportive of. But when we make these big public investments in ways that are holistically supporting our communities with these fair, well-paying jobs that are going to do that work, and also making sure that those kids are now able to go to school in a place where they can learn more easily, we really get a great return on those dollars that we're spending. So again, we're going to want to commit to this rapid transition to clean, green schools built with fair labor by Rhode Islanders. And it's the thing to do, the smart thing to do, and a critical thing to do to meet our state's carbon reduction commitments. Again, thank you very much for having me, and I want to thank everybody for being here.
Thank you, Representative Handy. I'd just like to recognize a few more of the champions for climate jobs that are here with us today from the General Assembly. Senator Lawson is here, Senator Cano is here, Senator Casada is here. Thank you for all of your support. I'd also like to acknowledge Representative Boylan, Representative Morales that are here. And the thing about the Climate Jobs Project that is important, it really is about how rank-and-file workers and rank-and-file activists can find family-sustaining jobs. And I'd just like to point out one rank-and-file worker who's been a champion for this cause, not only because he's got work out of it, because he recognizes why it's a value to the labor movement. And that's Maximo DeCabo from the Painters Union. Maximo has been made a star across the country talking about how he worked on the offshore wind right off of Block Island. So thank you, Maximo, for your support. The next person I'd like to bring up is Senator Hanna Gallo. Senator?
Thank you, Patrick. I'm honored to be here on behalf of the Senate. I want to thank Climate Jobs Rhode Island and all the advocates who are here today as part of the Green and Healthy Schools event. Our students and our teachers deserve the best resources and support that we can possibly give them. For too long, though, we have asked our children and our educators to embrace a 21st century approach to learning. However, in the buildings and classrooms that were designed for 20th century. As an educator, I'm passionate about this. It's an issue that is of prime importance. In the last few years, I've been proud to help lead the efforts to revitalize our aging and ailing school buildings. Together, we have made great progress. Modern classrooms and buildings have created excitement and new opportunities in communities across Rhode Island, and more projects are on their way. As we continue this work to enhance our learning spaces, we must seize another opportunity before us. The last several years have seen Rhode Island make incredible progress when it comes to climate action, and improvements to our learning spaces can be part of that important work. Through the Act on Climate and our renewable energy goals, Rhode Island has already become a leader on this front. By adopting green and healthy schools, we can continue to reduce carbon emissions and meet our climate goals, provide safe and healthy spaces for our children, address long-standing inequities and achievement gaps, save school districts and taxpayers millions of dollars in energy costs, and create good jobs across Rhode Island. This campaign is about investing in Rhode Island's future It's about our kids and the kind of world that we want for them. Together, we can make it one that is cleaner, safer, and filled with possibility. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator Gallo, and especially thank you for your leadership. Just a few more acknowledgments as folks keep coming into the room. Just want to acknowledge that Representative Speakman, Representative Tanzi, and Representative Agello were here, along with Senator Miller and Senator McKinney. Thank you for your support and for being here today. Next person I'd like to bring up is the co-chair of Climate Jobs Rhode Island, someone without whose advocacy none of this would even be possible. So please welcome to the microphone Priscilla de la Cruz.
Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Pat. As Pat mentioned, I am Priscilla de la Cruz, the co-chair of Climate Jobs Rhode Island, alongside Pat. And I'm extremely proud of our work to date, including this initiative, the Green and Healthy Schools campaign. I also wear a couple of other hats as the Senior Director of Government Affairs at the Audubon Society of Rhode Island and the President of the Environment Council of Rhode Island. And I'm here to remind us all that the latest climate science is telling us that the climate crisis is intensifying. It's accelerating right before our eyes and further threatening our economy, our communities, especially frontline and environmental justice communities who are overburdened by pollution and tend to be Black, Indigenous, people of color, and low-income communities. And these are communities who continue to experience deep inequities throughout the pandemic. Communities that have suffered from decades of disinvestments, and that is disinvestments in every aspect of their lives, including health, housing, heat, pollution, exposure. Communities where we should be prioritizing investments like these first. And yes, this is a matter of equity and justice, and it is essential to facing the climate crisis. We can't have one without the other. The outdated state of our public schools negatively affects the health of kids and teachers and educators and the environment around us. While the average of our school buildings hovers around half a century, the districts in our urban core have some of the poorest conditions and greatest deficiencies. For example, 6 of Providence middle schools average 90 years old. Just take a moment to think about that. And I grew up attending Providence Public Schools. I experienced the challenge of trying to academically succeed while learning in buildings with poor ventilation, poor lighting, even mold, and getting sent home because of rodent infestation, saying you can't come into the school building for about the next 3 days because we have rodent infestations to deal with. And as a kid thinking, how is that possible? Like I'm here to learn. And seeing classmates and family members battle worsening asthma symptoms and even asthma attacks, which is devastating to see another fellow young classmate and family member dealing disproportionately with asthma. If we're going to live up to the challenge that is facing the climate crisis and addressing environmental injustices, as I've described, we need all hands on deck. And we need bold solutions like green and healthy schools to avoid the worst impacts of climate change. And as Pat mentioned, in 2021, Rhode Island made history. We passed a landmark bill mandating and binding the state to meet carbon emission reduction targets set by the Act on Climate. And not only by net zero by 2050, we have interim binding mandated targets to meet. And that's 45% carbon emission reductions by 2030 and then 80% by 2040. This is the motivating driver for the Green and Healthy Schools campaign and the call for every single public school building to be decarbonized by 2035. Our public school buildings are literally the low-hanging fruit. And should be a high priority for early climate action. And I cannot thank enough Rep. Handy and Senator Gallo for introducing this important piece of legislation and for taking on this early action. Thank you very much for that. So in closing, investing in climate, in green union jobs, and most importantly, in the health and safety of our future state leaders, that's our kids. it's worth it. And it's frankly a no-brainer for our environment and our economy. And the fastest we can do this, the closer we will get to healthier communities and a safer, more resilient environment for all of us. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Priscilla. It really goes without saying that the leadership that Priscilla has showed over the last few years working together with the labor movement has really made such a difference in making sure that the state makes progress going forward. And another person who deserves a lot of credit for that, someone who tends to work behind the scenes, but when he does speak, people listen. So the next person I'd like to bring up to the microphone is Brother Joe Walsh from the IBEW Local 99.
Thank you and good afternoon. What Pat failed to mention is when they listen, they also run out of the room because they're done listening to me. But anyway, elected leaders, Climate Jobs Coalition, brothers and sisters of labor, friends and neighbors. My name is Joe Walsh, and I'm the business manager of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local Union 99 in Providence, Rhode Island. I'm here today as a representative of the Rhode Island Building Trades Council, which serves 10,000 members throughout this great state. I'm not going to bore you with the facts and figures, which is what I normally do, because most of us have difficulty comprehending the enormity of this problem or the 100,000-foot view it's going to take to fix this problem. But it only really matters what the success of that will be when we complete it. So as a construction electrician, I'd say building a successful student is no different than building a successful project. It takes certain things. It takes a good blueprint, takes the right materials, takes the right skilled people, takes the right operation to make a good student. But when we put our students in our apprenticeship class, we can't explain that to them because they don't even know at this point what a construction project is. So we explain it in simpler terms, the terms my grandmother used with me, which was baking a cake, right? So you had to have the right ingredients in the right amount, bake the right way for the right amount of time, change any one of those things, and you have a cake the dog wouldn't even eat, right? So the same thing happens with making a good student. So I've worked in schools all across this state for decades. I've seen great disparity in those schools. Some that look like bombed out buildings, Alcatraz, San Quentin, even with the brown water, whatever you want to call it, and other schools that are in pretty good shape, but they're certainly not up to today's professional standards. So we have all these schools can benefit from the plumbing upgrades, getting rid of the lead pipes, renewable energy solutions, HVAC being improved so the schools are not hot and cold every single day of the week, and the modern HVAC equipment. Others need much more extensive work. Interestingly enough, the intelligence of the students that occupy in any one of those schools is very similar, right? The kids are not less intelligent in Providence than they are over in Jamestown or Newport. They just don't have the same opportunities for the quality of schools. So the question is who will have the environment needed to succeed, which is critical for the perfect recipe to work. Most will see the program simply as an investment in our infrastructure and try to weigh the financial return on the overall cost. Although that financial return is certainly present and tangible, I'm here to tell you with zero reservations, your return on investments for the buildings is only one cog in this wheel. The real return on the investment is the ability to literally change the trajectory of a child's life by providing a place where they actually want to learn and not just try to get through their miserable day. Imagine any one of us working our job in a building that has ceilings falling down, mold growth, toxic materials, and more temperature fluctuations than menopause. I bet you would not if you were not financially in a position to quit, you would just try to get through your day so you can pay your bills and not have much interest in being your personal best. With that in mind, how could we ever possibly expect the literal future of this state to become the best legislators, doctors, attorneys, scientists, teachers, and skilled tradesmen and women when the most basic ingredients simply are not there? We already know we have amazing teachers. We already know that many of those teachers could quit for the very same issues, but hang in there for the kids, and I thank you for that. We already can logically speculate that right now in our schools, the next Pasteur, Salk, Sagan, Newton, Nikola Tesla, or fill in any other name you wish, is in our schools today. We also know that the legislation is taking great strides to protect our home, Mother Earth. But what a shame it would be if we continue to treat our children as if their future is just not as important as the next condominium complex or strip mall. I wish to thank you for your time today and urge you to tell anyone who will listen that our children deserve so much better than we offer them today. but we do have tomorrow.
Thank you, Joe. You know how we're going to do this? We're going to put solar panels on every single school building in the state. You know how we're going to do this? We're going to put a new building envelope and new windows in every single school. You know how we're going to do this? We're going to put heat pumps in every single school. We're going to make sure that these schools are built from the ground up, knowing that we're going to have a carbon-free system in this state. And it's going to be done in partnership with the building trades. It's going to be in partnership with the environmental movement, with our state, and with the federal government. The opportunities that we see before us between the Inflation Reduction Act and the bipartisan infrastructure bill to bring billions of dollars into this economy is one of the reasons why this bill is so important. So for our last speaker, I'd like to bring up someone who's got not only a pulse on what happens in our schools, but what it really means to be a classroom teacher here in Rhode Island. Ladies and gentlemen, the Executive Director of NEA Rhode Island, Ms. Mary Barden.
Thank you, Patrick. Good afternoon. My name is Mary Barden, and I'm the Executive Director of the National Education Association, Rhode Island. I am here to ask our legislators to support green and healthy schools and to decarbonize all public K-to-school buildings by 2035. The legislation addresses two important issues for our students' future: climate justice and building and maintaining safe and healthy schools. From the education lens, our students need clean, safe, healthy, modern, 21st century learning environments to thrive academically. We also need to make sure we are addressing climate change for their future. This legislation does both. Many of our schools are in a state of disrepair. Some of the major problems include mold infestations, leaky roofs, lead service lines, and insufficient HVAC systems. These problems have a tremendous impact on students' health and ability to learn. These issues disproportionately impact low-income communities and communities of color, but these issues are in about every school district in the state. In buildings which need these repairs, we see students and staff suffering from a variety of health issues like asthma, headaches, allergic reactions, fatigue, and this results in both missed school days for students and missed work days for employees. As an educator, I can tell you about teaching in a classroom with a roof leak for well over a year. The smell of mold was pervasive. The noise from the dehumidifier was loud and distracting. As we saw in the pandemic, many schools have inadequate ventilation and HVAC systems which are outdated. These are not optimal conditions for teaching and learning. In order to improve education outcomes, we need to make sure students have safe, warm, dry, and healthy learning environments. An environment that makes them feel valued, respected, in which they can learn and thrive. Our schools are also working conditions for our teachers and educational support staff, including teacher assistants, secretarial, and custodial workers. They also deserve to have a healthy and safe working environment. This legislation can also lead to cost savings for districts, which they can then funnel back into their school communities. There is also a cost not to act: missed school days, poor educational outcomes, health costs, and the costs associated with climate impact. It is our responsibility to create healthy, safe environments for our students in which they can succeed and learn. It is also our responsibility to combat climate change. Our schools can be a model for net zero energy buildings and also can be healthy, safe, 21st century learning environments. We cannot delay our action to ensure the health and safety of every student, educator, and all individuals who work and occupy our public school buildings. Issues of poor ventilation, crumbling ceilings, mold, and rotted pipes are unacceptable and pose major physical risks and significant health impacts for the entire school community. Through supporting the Green and Healthy Schools Initiative, we can make necessary and long overdue infrastructural improvements to our school facilities, save school districts thousands of dollars, create good-paying jobs for Rhode Islanders, and reinvest that money in education. In conclusion, we are calling on our state lawmakers to support green and healthy schools, to decarbonize all public K-12 school buildings by 2035. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Just a few more announcements before we bring this to conclusion. I want to acknowledge that Senator Valverde, Senator DePalma, and Representative McGarr have joined us, champions one and all on health and safety for schools and making sure that Climate Jobs gets across the finish line. So, in conclusion, where's Erica Hammond? Erica, please raise your hand. Please, no one leave today without seeing Erica. Erica has a QR code for you to send an email to your elected representatives and senators to support green and healthy schools. The bill numbers are 6008 in the House and 537 in the Senate. And this is the year to make this happen. This is the year we take one more giant leap forward to making sure that Rhode Island meets its goals on the Act on Climate. All of the speakers will be available for any questions from the media at the conclusion of the event. And with that, thank you very much, and let's get this passed this year.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of Labor Vision. We appreciate your input and encourage your comments. Labor Vision can be seen on this channel 3 times each week: Tuesday at 7 p.m., Thursday at 8 p.m., and Saturday at 5 p.m.